For over 300 years, just one dynasty ruled a vast and incredibly wealthy empire. They left behind a legacy of stunning architecture, really complex politics, and a story that truly shaped modern India. This is the incredible rise and fall of the Mughal Empire. And to really get it, we have to start with a single fundamental question. So why did the Mughals come to India? This is the question that really kicks off our entire story. I mean, what drives a foreign power to not just invade, but to actually set up a dynasty that would last for centuries? You'll be surprised to learn the answer doesn't start with a grand army, but with a boy who had lost everything. His name was Zahir-ud-Din Muhammad, but history knows him as Babur. At just 12 years old, he inherited a tiny kingdom called Fergana in what's now Uzbekistan. But he was almost immediately betrayed by his own family, driven out, and left with pretty much nothing but his ambition. So, after years of struggle, Babur finally manages to capture Kabul in 1504. But he just knew that to build a real empire, the little kingdom of Kabul wasn't going to cut it. He needed resources, he needed wealth, and so he set his sights on the richest land he knew of. To really understand Babur's drive, you have to know this term, Sona ki Chidiya, or the golden bird. Now, this wasn't just some poetic phrase. It was India's global reputation. The land was legendary for its riches, and Babur knew that conquering it was the key to his imperial dreams. So when a few unhappy nobles in Delhi sent him an invitation to invade, well, that was the perfect opportunity. And so, in 1526, Babur crosses the Indus River and marches toward Delhi. But standing in his way is the Sultan of Delhi, Ibrahim Lodi, and his absolutely enormous army. What happens next, at a place called Panipat, will change the course of Indian history forever. Just take a look at these numbers. It seems completely impossible, right? Babur is outnumbered almost 10 to 1. Lodi has this massive force and his ultimate weapon, war elephants. But Babur, he had a secret weapon of his own, something totally new to the Indian battlefield, gunpowder. But this wasn't just about better tech. It was about brilliant strategy. See, Babur refused to fight Lodi's kind of battle. Instead, he built a fortified position. The trench would break up the enemy charge, the carts acted like a protective wall, and from behind this defense, his cannons and archers could fire away safely. He basically forced a massive army into a deadly bottleneck. And this was the turning point. The sound of the cannons, something nobody there had ever heard on this scale, absolutely terrified Lodi's greatest asset. The war elephants panicked. They turned around and started trampling their own soldiers, causing absolute chaos. By the end of the day, Ibrahim Lodi was dead and the path to Delhi was wide open. The Mughal Empire had officially begun. Now, after Babur, in a bit of a rocky period under his son Humayun, the empire enters what's known as its Golden Age. This was an era of incredible expansion, enormous wealth, and a true cultural flourishing under a series of legendary emperors. This golden age was really defined by three incredible emperors. First, you have Akbar, maybe the greatest of them all. He expanded the empire massively and introduced policies of religious tolerance that really helped stabilize things. His son, Jahangir, kept the prosperity going but made a really fateful decision. He allowed British traders to get a foothold in India. And finally, there was Shah Jahan, whose reign marks the absolute peak of Mughal wealth, power, and art. And just to give you a sense of scale, under Akbar, the empire stretched over 2.5 million square kilometers. He conquered the powerful Rajput kingdoms and brought a massive part of the subcontinent under a single rule. This wasn't just conquered land, it was organized into a stable and prosperous superstate. And all that prosperity is probably best symbolized by the incredible things built under Shah Jahan. We're talking about the magnificent Taj Mahal, a monument to love, the imposing Red Fort in Delhi, and the legendary Peacock Throne, a seat of power literally covered in priceless gems. This was an empire at the absolute height of its confidence and wealth. But of course, this golden age wouldn't last. The story of the empire's decline begins with Shah Jahan's own son, a man whose ambition and ruthless piety would plunge the empire into decades of conflict, Aurangzeb. The transfer of power was just brutal. Shah Jahan had actually chosen his eldest, more liberal-minded son, Dara Shikoh, to be his successor, but Aurangzeb wasn't having any of it. He declared war on his own brother, defeated him, and then imprisoned his aging father in the Agra fort for the rest of his life. And to leave absolutely no doubt about who was in power, Aurangzeb did something unimaginably cruel. After executing Dara Shikoh, he had his brother's severed head sent to their imprisoned father. I mean, that one act just sets the tone for a reign that was defined by brutal efficiency and unending war. You see, unlike his great-grandfather Akbar, Aurangzeb completely abandoned religious tolerance. He destroyed Hindu temples. He brought back the hated jizya tax, which was a special tax only on non-Muslims. Stories of forced conversion spread, alienating huge parts of the population and sparking rebellions with the Marathas, Rajputs, and others that would just bleed the empire dry for decades. Aurangzeb died in 1707 after ruling for nearly 50 years. He left behind a vast but very fragile empire, totally exhausted by constant warfare and internal fighting. His death triggered the final slow collapse. What came next was basically a revolving door of weak, ineffective emperors. The central authority in Delhi just crumbled. Rulers would last a few years, sometimes only a few months, before being kicked out or assassinated. The empire was literally breaking apart from the inside. And while all this was happening, while the Mughals were getting weaker, another power was patiently growing stronger. The British East India Company, the one Jahangir had allowed in as simple traders, was now a major political and military force, and they were experts at exploiting the chaos and expanding their own control, piece by piece. The final blow came after the Indian Rebellion of 1857. The British formally deposed the last Mughal emperor, Bahadur Shah Zafar II. By then, he wasn't a mighty king, just a figurehead. He was exiled to Burma, where he died, and after more than 300 years, the House of Babur had finally fallen. So, from a 12-year-old boy's ambition to an empire that gave the world the Taj Mahal, and then into a slow, painful decline, it leaves us with a pretty critical question, doesn't it? How do we remember a legacy of both breathtaking beauty and brutal conquest? Can an empire's incredible art ever really overshadow its violence? That is the complex story the Mughals left behind.